Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Bumper Radio. I am Dave Riccio, and Matt Allen is playing hooky this weekend. So today, I am your KTAR car guy. We're heard here every Saturday from 11 to noon, right here on News Talk 92.3 KTAR. At Bumper Radio, we are helping you, the motoring public, have a better overall car experience. If you've got car questions, we've got answers, so give us a call at 602-277-5827, 602-277-KTAR. You can also text us at 411-923. And I say we because I brought Joel Bartko from Arizona Imports in Tempe to help me help you with your car. We're going to have a little bit of fact or fiction, taking your text and phone calls. And, Joel, this is the time of year that people are breaking down and tow trucks are lining our parking lots. Does that happen at your shop?
Yeah, Dave, just like yesterday, I called it the kickoff day. First hot day, the first weekend, and they just started coming in on the truck.
Well, back when I was in the tire business, July was double what I did in December. And I don't know if people realize that our shops go up by like 30-40% in business volume during the summer because it's that dramatic. When it's 100 degrees out, 110 degrees out, whatever was weak or questionable on your car is breaking.
Yeah, I've noticed that over the years, the minute you go from 90 to 105, it just changes everything on the cars, especially 2-3 days in a row of that heat, extreme pressure on the cooling system, the tires, the batteries. A lot of the stuff that we told you about in the past starts coming back to get you.
Well, vehicle inspections, you said that you got these cars, they towed in on your, towed into your shop, and you're looking in the glove box for some information on some prior repairs, and they have all the receipts there, maybe from 10 different shops, but you'll see a repair or recommended repair for a radiator, which they didn't do, but now it's got a blown radiator, and now it's been towed in, it's at your shop, and not only is the radiator bad, the head gasket is blown. So when is someone fishing on your car for work? Because everyone is gun-shy when they go to the auto shop. Oh, man, those guys just want to dig in my wallet. So how does a consumer know who's digging in the wallet, who's not digging in the wallet? When do they need to listen? And if they've got a good technician, they should be listening all the time, but they don't know when they do and when they don't. How can they tell?
Well, people come in all the time, and they come in for an oil change, and then we come back and we tell them we inspected the vehicle, and we found that you've got a radiator that's getting ready to fail or a tire that's going bad. A lot of times we hear from the people, oh, I'm selling the car, I'm getting rid of the car.
That's how they get rid of us. They don't want to talk to you or tell you no, so they're just saying I'm selling it.
They think we're trying to make money. And yeah, we are trying to earn our living. That's what we do, but we're trying to protect them and their vehicle to make things better. A good inspection is really worth something. Free inspections, what you got to be careful of. Sometimes a good inspection is worth paying for, where someone's knows that they're not losing time and looking at your car. They're trying to find what's really going on. I'm not talking about diagnosing problems. I'm talking about inspecting the car from front to back, the engine, the transmission, the radiator hoses, all the common points that we have on our sheets. Most of us have checkout sheets, but there's things that are on the sheets that an experienced technician is going to pick up. And yeah, he's going to make money fixing it, but he might be saving you a breakdown or saving you money in the future where a radiator, $500, is still a lot less than a $2,500 head gasket or a $7,000 engine.
Well, Matt picks on, he heard an advertisement once for a cursory vehicle inspection, and he laughs at that. What the heck is a cursory vehicle inspection? He Googled the word to see what Wikipedia called cursory, and it said something as of no value. And I do want to say there is a lot of free inspections out there, and you get an oil change, and we're going to do a 16-point inspection. I want to tell you about my first job working at a tire store. My training lasted all of about 15 minutes. I mean, I was good with my hands. I fixed my little dirt bike and my go-kart, and I understood how some mechanical stuff worked, but I had zero experience as far as looking at people's car. So I had a guy named Nikolai. He didn't speak much English. He was straight out of Russia. He showed me how to lift the car, put it on a hoist, and drain the oil, and go find the oil filter, and all that stuff. But 15 minutes. But I was part of your $16 free inspection that you got with your, back then it was a $19 oil change, and we thought that was spendy at that time.
And you got what you paid for.
Well, I looked at the car. I didn't really know what I was looking for. I mean, he said, pull off the radiator cap, see if there's fluid in it, look at the power steering fluid, make sure it's full. So I looked at the fluid levels, and I did my oil change, and I'm proud to say I never had an engine go bad after I changed the oil, because that happens. People will double O-ring an oil filter, or forget to put oil in a car, that type of thing. That's something that a young, inexperienced tech, and I was, and I never burned up an engine, though. I'm proud of that. But it happens. But you're not talking about a guy that is really inspecting the vehicle. So I hear people say, "Oh, I just had my car in the shop. They just checked it. Everything should be fine." But they got what I call a cursory inspection. Matt's favorite.
And the guys didn't see half the things that they should have been looking for. They weren't trained for it. They didn't know for it. Then we run into the cars that people are told what it needs. They're given a list of things, sometimes even given estimates on the repairs, and they decline them, and that's fine. But a lot of times it comes back to haunt you, and we saw that just in the last couple of days.
This is where it comes down to relationship and finding a home and finding a good shop. So when they look at your car, they've got a history with the car. They've got a history with you. You know, are these guys, well, no, I know them. I've known them for years. They're not fishing on my car. They're going to tell me what I need, and I can believe it. And most people tell me, Dave, I just want to shop where I know I'm not being screwed or taken advantage of. That's all they care about. I'm more than happy to fix my car, but if it's unnecessary, I certainly don't want to pay for it.
Yeah, something we spoke about earlier today. I said I'm kind of proud, and I know Matt the same way, when we don't see our regular customers getting towed in all the time. The ones that listen to our recommendations. It's a pride thing to us. We want to not see you get towed in and broke down on the side of the road. When they come in on a tow truck and they're broken down, yeah, we feel good our parking lot's full and we're going to be making money fixing the cars. But I like to know it's stuff that we couldn't have prevented. If we could have prevented it and we did, we're happy about that.
Well, that's interesting. I'm signed up for a resource that is connected with the tow business, and they refer tows to my shop when a car breaks down. And at this point, I've been with them for about 3 months, and I've had 6 cars towed in. All 6 cars came in broken down. All 6 cars were literally pieces of junk. And they were people that did not have a regular relationship with the shop. And I decided, you know what, I don't want your customers anymore. I don't want you referring business here, because they were people that didn't want to take care of the car and didn't see the value in what we did as auto shops. You take pride, Joel, in taking care of your regular customers or any customer that comes through the door, but you have a relationship with them. Matt's shop does what I think is probably one of the better inspections with its oil change. They also do a paid inspection, but you go in for an oil change at most shops, and this is the way I did it when I first started changing oil. The car gets moved 15 feet from the parking spot to the bay. We pick it up, we drain the oil, we look at a couple things, we put the oil back in it, we pull it right back to that parking space. That's a huge problem. I know at Matt's shop, they drive every car they change the oil on.
Yeah, Dave, we drive every car too. And I can just tell you real quick, we had a car come in just the other day, young girl, first car. Her father's been coming in for years. Says change the oil, it's overheating. We find the overheating problem. One of my technicians drives the car home overnight just to make sure it's all verified and everything's good. He comes back the next morning and says, this car's undrivable. You hit the brakes, the whole car shakes. It wants to change lanes. I call the girl up. She doesn't even know. Her father, he's never driven it. Without driving that car, she was driving an unsafe vehicle. We wouldn't have caught, even because when you looked at the brakes, they inspected good on the looks of them.
On the looks of them. So you're not going to see a warped rotor, which was probably her problem, or just looking at it on a hoist, just visually, you're not going to see that unless you go drive the car. And if you drive a car, that car's gotten worse over time as you've been driving it, so you didn't notice.
She adjusted to it. She got used to it.
Compensated for it, right? So it's like your mattress. Matt says your pair of shoes. You don't realize until your shoes are bad until you actually replace them. You're like, wow, that's nice.
Sometimes you get in your wife's car and you say, wow, don't you feel that? And she goes, no, it's always been like that. It didn't happen overnight. It happened gradually sometimes.
I've got my wife's car in the shop, and I've had it for a week. And it's actually over at Joel's shop now to get the air condition fixed. But she had a loose tie rod in. I mean, the nut was on there, and it had the cotter pin in there. But before I bought that car, someone had replaced the tie rod ends on it. And you know what? The tie rod end was loose. But I don't drive her car. She's like, I think there's something going on with it. Maybe you should take it for a drive. And she got a flat tire, so I had to bring it in.
I know that. I know when my daughter says you got to drive her car, I go, oh, God, what's wrong now?
Right.
Because if she notices it's bad, but I'll get in her car when there's no complaints and say, don't you feel it pulling? Don't you feel this? And with our customers' cars, we need to drive them. And sometimes they look at us, why are they taking my oil change on the ride up the road? We want to feel it. Sometimes you got to feel things to know. A good inspection isn't always free. It takes time. It takes someone who has experience to know what they're doing.
Well, when you get something for free, what are you getting? It's like the giveaways with the company's logo on it, little tchotchkes that they give you. You know, oh, that's nice, and it goes in a junk drawer, and that's all that ever happens with it. It's of no value if it's just kind of like, yeah, we kind of sort of looked at it, and everything looks good. you may feel a sense of comfort. Well, it was just in the shop and someone did lift the hood. But who lifted the hood? Because I was 16 when I was changing oils on people's cars, and I was missing stuff, and it wasn't that I was a bad guy. I just had zero experience.
It's the double-edged sword for us, though, because customers think we're fishing to try and find things to sell them. But it's like when you go to the doctor. You want the doctor not to tell you that there's something wrong? Yeah, we all want to hear we're good, but sometimes he's got to tell you so that you can get treatment for what you need, and it's the same thing with us.
Well, when we come back, we've got wide open lines at 602-277-5827, 602-277-KTR. You can also text us at 411-923, and we'll talk a little bit more about Darned If We Do, Darned If We Don't. We refer to Matt's blog at KTR.com. You're listening to Bumper to Bumper Radio. Wow. The one thing I really like about having Bree in the booth is the music is getting so much better. I haven't heard that song in a long time. Thanks so much, Bree. Welcome back to Bumper Radio. I am Dave Riccio. Matt Allen is out, so I brought in Joel Bartko from Arizona Imports in Tempe, who's helping me help you with your car. If you got car questions, you can get a hold of us at 602-277-5827, 602-277-KTR. We got some open slots. You can also text us at 411-923 if you're shy. Again, that's 411-923. Up first this segment, we are going to go with Bill in Chandler. Looks like he's got a 02 Toyota Tundra with a battery question. Go ahead, Bill. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hi, guys. It's an 01. It's a Tundra with a 4.7. I've been living in Arizona since 81. I moved out here, and I've had every battery, I guess every brand name you can just about think of. I even tried, I thought the gel batteries were cool at one time, and they didn't last as long as the regular batteries. And I just went to ADC, great guys. I praised them to the heavens on your program before. They put in an AC Delco 710 cold cranking, and it says 42 on the side. I guess that's, kind of sort of a benchmark, prorated, et cetera. In your opinion, I need an expert opinion. Is there anything you can do, or you just got to figure in Arizona it's 2 years and change the thing?
That's a great question, Bill. I think everybody can relate to that, and that's pretty much your answer right there at the end. What do you think, Joel?
I tell all my customers 30 months is about the average life of a battery in Arizona. Get a new one before you get stuck. We write with a paint marker on top of every battery the date we install it. That way when they come in for their oil change inspection, if they're getting close, I tell them if it's not dead, I'd still replace it. It's better than getting stuck. There's really not that many battery manufacturers out there, a lot of different names. Arizona, you get about 2.5 years if it's in the engine compartment. Some of the batteries in the trunks in the European cars, you'll get more.
Well, it's so hot in the engine compartment, so these things start breaking down at 250 degrees, and it's easily that hot underneath the hood.
Way hotter than that. I spend a lot of time under there every day.
Well, you got the exhaust manifolds in there. Those things are probably 12, 13, 1,400 degrees.
Yeah, and then you got those nice fans kicking the heat around.
It feels really good. So, Bill, AC Delco is a good battery. I know a lot of guys like it. I know Matt uses that at Virginia Auto. What kind of brand do you use at Arizona Imports?
We're using Interstate and Napa, which are all made by the same people. That's the funny thing. There's not that many manufacturers out there. AC Delco's a great battery, though.
Well, before the break, you mentioned that we're darned if we do, darned if we don't. And if you look at Matt's blog at KTR.com, you're going to find that if we recommend stuff to you as the consumer, you're in our shop, you're getting that oil change, we did an inspection, and we come up and say, your radiator, your tanks are starting to get a greenish color to it. It's about 10 years old. I'm worried you're going to have a radiator blowout. We tell you about it. Well, you don't see any puddles on the driveway, so you're like, well, these guys are just fishing for work. Don't always assume that. And the blog is specifically about a shop who said, hey, you got a tire problem. They ignored it. There was a big accident. And the shop ended up getting sued because 3 out of 4 times they told them about it, and one time they didn't, and it cost them $3.9 million, pocket change. But we're darned if we tell you about it because we're like, we're going to get the pushback from the customer that we're just selling them stuff. But if we don't tell them and you have a blowout or you have a major issue, you're mad because you didn't tell me about it. That's what you do. You're checking out my car.
I always tell them. We always write it down. If it's unsafe, we document them and make it sign it. But sometimes the customer will make you almost feel uncomfortable because you told them this 3 times in a row.
I know, it gets awkward, right?
It does. It makes you feel like I am trying to sell him something that he doesn't need. But I know we know our morals. Most of us shops, we know what's right and wrong. you can't make people do things, but when it comes to safety, we really push it. But then they think you're pushing too much, so it puts you in that awkward spot.
Well, you can find shops like Joel's at bumpertobumperradio.com. It really comes down to having a good relationship with your shop. If you're a consumer that has that trust issue, maybe you're an orphan and you go to every shop, different shop every time you take your car in, you need to stop that. You need to get a relationship going. If you've got a great shop, stick with them or go to bumpertobumperradio.com. Hey, Bill, thanks for the call. 602-277-5827, 602-277-KTR. We're going to go with Karen in Phoenix. She's got a 2007 Mercedes C230. What can we help you with today, Karen?
Hi, good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Hey, I just have a quick question. I've got a C230. I love the car, but when I'm on the freeway, I'll get off the freeway, come to a stop, and it doesn't happen all the time, just every once in a while. Come to a stop, and then when I start the car to go forward again, it starts to struggle where it will only go 5 to 10 miles an hour, and I need to pull over, turn it off, start it again, and it's fine again. Any clues?
Do you have any warning lights on?
Every once in a while I do, but typically 90% I don't.
Well, I think you need to address the one or two times that you do, because that's something that someone's going to have to get in the shop, and the first thing they're going to have to do is try and duplicate it and put a scanner on it and see, even though the light's not lit, they're probably storing a code inside your computer to guide us in a direction.
Hey, Karen, you mentioned that
Okay.
it doesn't happen every time. So in the course of there's probably a regular drive that you're doing where you're getting off the freeway. Does it happen 1 in 10 times you get off the freeway, or does it happen 5 out of 10 times?
It happens 1 in 50 times I get off the freeway.
Does the engine rev up, or it just won't even rev up?
It does not rev up. It definitely struggles.
Well, it sounds like it's going into some sort of failure management mode, and a lot of these vehicles, whether it's the transmission or the engine, when it gets, the computer sees a signal it doesn't like and it sees a problem, it's going to go into a default or fail-safe or limp home mode. That's to A, let you know there's a problem, and A, you can still get off to the side of the road. It's not gonna throw you back in the seat when you give it gas, but it needs to get checked out.
And somebody needs to look at it before the 1 out of 10 becomes 10 out of 10.
Right. Yeah, one day it's just not going to go. Something bigger is going to go happening. So, Karen, thanks for the call. We've got a text here that looks like the gentleman's got a 2001 F-150 4.6 liter original radiator. Should I be thinking about replacing them? Oh, original radiator hoses, 2001. So the vehicle is 13 years old. Original radiator hoses. What do you think, Joel?
I would think somebody needs to look at them, but that's kind of long, yeah, and I'm laughing because I'm guilty of the same thing.
Do you got the original hoses on your car?
Shoemaker has holes in his shoes. I've got 200,000 miles. And my car is inspected all the time, and nobody's told me, but I think of it all the time, and I would say 10 years, 100,000 miles, that should be about the limit.
Well, one thing that you mentioned in that you had happen at your shop this week is you replaced 3 radiators that weren't actually bad. In other words, they were showing signs they're ready to give out, but you went ahead and recommended to the customer ahead of time just to prevent that breakdown and the head gasket problem and the engine problem. Tell me about that real quick.
Yeah, you want to prevent that from happening, because overheating is the #1 cause of failure, especially in Arizona, especially causing major engine damage. A lot cheaper to spend $500 on a radiator. We see it starting to turn, the tanks start to turn color or stress cracks. We're going to recommend the radiator new hoses. I find in Arizona, average life 10 years, 100,000 miles.
So when we come back, we've got open lines. It's 602-277-5827, 602-277-KTR. We're going to tell you more about how to listen to the mechanic, when you should, when you shouldn't. You're listening to Bumper to Bumper Radio. Well, welcome back to Bumper Radio. I am Dave Riccio. Matt Allen is out today. He decided to go to some automotive training. Why he would do that, I have no idea. Maybe it's 'cause
He's so smart already.
I know. Why does he doesn't need anything else? Hopefully he's teaching the class at least by now.
Sure.
Well, you can reach us at 602-277-5827, 602-277-KTR. We've got some open lines. And I want to go back to Karen's phone call, the one that would get off the freeway 150 times and her car had no power. What happened there was that her check engine light or some sort of warning light came on. She was able to turn the car off. You know, the car went into like a failure management mode. Turn the car off, reset the things, turn it back on, it goes back to driving. But what happened when that light came on? It sent an error message in the computer. For here on the show, there is no way we could even tell you what we think is going on with that car. it would be impossible for us to do that. But
that's what we were trying to get out of asking her questions, but it was just when she said she turned it off and reset it, I think Dave's right. It was in a fail-safe mode and that reset it, but what caused it, none of us will know until somebody looks at it.
So, Karen, you're going to have to get in. If you're looking for a good shop, bumpertobumperradio.com. If you're anywhere near Tempe, I know Joel does a lot of import cars, Mercedes being one of them. Matt at Virginia Auto does a lot of Mercedes and BMW. I always feel like anything with weird keys, and I think of European cars as having weird keys, kind of weird prices. They're more expensive to fix, but they sure drive nice. So anyway, I've got a text here. The gentleman has a 2009 F-150. He wants to know E85 in his truck. Does it actually get less performance? Pros and cons. What's your opinion? We hardly see it in this town, Joe. What's your opinion?
We don't see a lot of E85, but I've read a lot about it, and it's very corrosive to the fuel system. And what I've read makes me not a big fan. I'm actually going to a training class in 2 weeks about that. But I've read it's more popular, much more popular out in the Midwest, but it's very corrosive to the fuel system, and I don't think there's a big savings. I would avoid it personally if it was me.
So maybe it burns cleaner, it's a little less expensive, but you get a little less fuel economy? Is that pretty much the way I understand it?
And it's not that much less expensive, really.
Right, so it's like not much of a difference.
And this always comes into play this time of year when the gas prices go up. But I don't know if it's corrosive to the fuel system that the savings you would get would equal what you're going to have to deal with later if your fuel system becomes corroded.
Well, thanks so much for the text. We're going to go with Joe in Phoenix. He's got a 1998 Honda Accord. Hey, Joe, what can we help you with your Honda on today?
Yeah, I'm having a problem with the catalytic converter. The check engine light came on about a year and a half ago. It indicated catalytic converter. I had the light turned off, went through emissions, it passed. Now, since then, the light has come back on, and it was steady for a while. Now it's starting to go on and off.
Okay. What's
my problem? I don't want to invest in a new catalytic converter, and I was told that it wouldn't hurt the car to run it that way.
Well, that's a great question, Joe, and that's something I think that everybody out there can learn from. We even got a text that's right along this line, is that a bad catalytic converter. So what's happening is on your exhaust system, and Joel, stop me if I'm wrong because I'm just a transmission guy, but there's an O2 sensor before the catalytic converter and an O2 sensor after the catalytic converter.
On the Accord, it's right in the middle, the rear sensor, in the converter usually.
Okay, so that O2 sensor is looking for the efficiency of that catalytic converter.
Yeah, the front one versus the rear one, they would look at it. Someone should look at it on a graph. If you don't want to put one in, eventually it's going to fit. It sounds like it's going out to me. Doesn't have to be the catalytic converter that's failing. No, it could just be the oxygen sensor and it's not reading it right. But someone really needs to check it out. And it should be fixed. I mean, it's not stopping you from driving right now, but you won't pass emissions. It's not doing its job. And if it ever did fail internally, it could clog up and stop you from moving also.
How did he sneak through emissions by having a bad catalytic converter?
It got hot enough. It's not totally dead. Whatever reason, a lot of times you clear the code. Guys drive a few more days because you still have to go through the drive cycle to pass. And it's not totally dead yet, so it's coming in and on. And if you drive it harder, it'll heat it up. If the catalytic converter gets hot enough and it's still alive, it will work.
Okay, so you can still get through. And one of the things you said, drive cycle, and I want to point out to everybody what that means. Anytime you clear the codes out, he said, I got the light turned off. So that means they cleared out the diagnostic trouble codes or the memory of the computer. So in the late model cars, when you go to emissions, this is anything after 95 and a half, 1996 cars.
Every car after 1996, the minute you turn the key on, that car starts testing itself. Anything that's emissions related, drivability wise, fuel related, it's going through a system readiness test, meaning it has to pass that test as you're driving. If it fails that test once, it usually doesn't turn the light on. Twice in the same trip, it's going to turn that light on. Certain things turn on right away. Just turning off the light, though, doesn't fix anything.
Doesn't fix anything. It just takes that little
clears
message.
The memory.
So, but the drive cycle is if you turn out the light or you change batteries, the car has to go through so many self-tests before the emission stations will be able to pass it. Because they're going to ask the car, hey, have you run all your tests? And the car is going to say, well, I've run 9 out of 10, so we'll let you through. Or it's going to say, we've only run 7 out of 10, we're not going to let you through.
I have people come in all the time saying, hey, turn off my light, I got to go to emissions. I go, that's not going to work. If it could, I'd be a millionaire just turning off lights all day.
Right. It's pretty easy to turn out the lights.
Yeah.
You couldn't make millions, but
Well, if you turn off enough of them. But the light is on there to tell you something's wrong. And if you just ignore the light, eventually something else is going to go wrong.
for sure. Well, I've got Doro, Gary, and Marcia, and I want to take a text here because this one says, "What's your favorite truck?" And I don't know which hat I'm wearing. Am I wearing my auto shop owner hat, because that would be one kind of truck? If I'm wearing, what kind of truck do I like? Because I just like to drive it and I look good in it, and I like to look good. What do I want to drive? Joel, what's your favorite truck?
Dave, I'm an import guy. I fix mostly Japanese and European cars, but I love my F-150, and I want to buy a new F-150 with the EcoBoost. I just like it. Personal choice. There's a lot of nice trucks out there.
I was really impressed with the EcoBoost. I have no idea, because really the EcoBoost technology is not that old. So what is that car going to look like in 5 or 10 years? But you drive an F-150 now, and other than the fact that you had to buy a transmission from me, which works really well, really good, by the way. Works great. That's been a great truck for you. How many miles is on that thing?
Over 200,000, and that's really the only major problem that I've ever had. And I've never been a Ford guy. I'm not going to lie about it, but that truck's been great to me.
Well, he's running on borrowed time because apparently he's got the original radiator and radiator hoses. So.
We don't want to talk about that.
Anyway, Joel, if you ever break down, I know the number to a good tow service.
Thanks.
You can always email questions at bumpertobumperradio.com. We're going to go ahead and go with Marcia in Scottsdale. Hopefully I'm reading that right. Go ahead, Marcia, you're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hi. I'm calling actually about my daughter's car. She drives a Honda Odyssey, and she carries around a lot of kids all the time. She's got about 130,000 miles on it. When I was first learning to drive, which was about 100 years ago, my dad, who drove professionally for a living, told me that when you press the brake, and you can actually press it to where if you put your other foot underneath and the brake is touching, that it's too low. But I've been told by the younger generation, if you will, that in the newer cars, that no longer holds true.
So he's saying that if you're pushing the brake, and
when I push the brake when I drive her car, it seems to go very far down.
I'm from the younger generation, and I think that somebody should look at it just because every vehicle's different. And your father's right about what he said years ago, but nowadays vehicles are just different. And I drive all different kind of cars every day with different brake pedals, and I'll think they're not right. If you're even questioning it, have a professional check it out.
Well, pedal height. In the pedal height in most vehicles, when I remember, that came from the rear brakes and the rear brake adjustment. That's where you got your pedal height, because the rear brakes hit first before you come to the front. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, but nowadays you got four-wheel disc brakes and ABS and vehicle stability. You should be able to, usually you can slide your foot under there, but some people have a lot bigger foot than the next guy, so that's not really a good gauge.
Well, it should be something that gets checked out, and someone that drives, I drive 30 cars a week, and I actually kind of get used to the different brands and how they feel, and I can get in and say, this is not right, even for a Nissan. The text we had about catalytic converters, the guy had a Nissan Murano, and his cats were bad. He was looking for a shop. I believe he was on the west side. Nissan Murano, check engine light. I was told it was a catalytic converter. Any shops you would recommend near Buckeye? We definitely have. You could go to see, I'm drawing a blank on their name, but they're like 51st Avenue in Indian School. Larry Harker's would be the closest thing we would have over that direction. Or you could actually go see the guys at S&S Tire. They've got a couple shops on the west side that would be convenient. Catalytic converters, Joel, you're getting a catalytic converter on your car. Do I buy an aftermarket one because they're so much cheaper, and that is so tantalizing over buying a factory one?
They're not really cheaper. You need to get a factory catalytic converter on most late model cars.
That's a point that we're going to make to you, and people say, Dave, the factory ones are very expensive, and the reason they're so expensive is the catalyst, the thing that creates a chemical change without adding anything to the chemical process. The catalyst is titanium, polonium carbide, something else is in there that sounds important.
I've done catalytic converters on these new cars. I've done them on BMWs where they're $3,000, and I did a Nissan the other day that was about $1,000. And they're so valuable, the material inside them, that if the scrap metal guys will give you $200 for an old burnt up one.
Right.
That nowadays you don't even get that. They turn them in as cores. But you got to use the factory cat because the manufacturing process of those is so different than the much less expensive aftermarket ones. Cheap solution doesn't really work that long. I found it's not really cost effective.
Well, a couple things too. Matt always says that in the perfect world, a catalytic converter would never go bad. But we know the world's not perfect. So when an engine's not running right, it will cause that catalytic converter to go bad sooner because it's working extra hard and it's getting sooted up, basically. And you don't want to buy a catalytic converter. So when you see a check engine light, don't just get it turned off so you can get through emissions. You want to fix that because it's going to cost you more if you got to buy a cat down the road.
Usually a catalytic converter fails because something else failed first, like a misfire that let unburned fuel into that catalytic converter.
So, good point. Well, time for fact or fiction. I'm sitting at Matt's computer. I have no idea how to say that, play that thing, so I'll do it without it. Fact or fiction? The fact or fiction question for today, Joel can't even look at me right now, is tire rotation. Tires should be rotated front to back on my vehicle. Fact or fiction? Come on, Joel.
I'm going to say fiction.
You're going to say fiction, not front to back.
Yeah, well, you're going to rotate them front to back. You're usually going to cross the two fronts when you put them on the rear and bring the rear straight forward.
That would be on a rear-wheel drive car. What about on a front-wheel drive car?
Well, we went over this morning. We had a discrepancy over it. I always do it the way I just said, and we found when we looked it up on certain websites that they said to take the rears and cross them into the front.
The rears, well, I think it was on a front-wheel drive car. So whenever there's a free-spinning tire, we're going to cross-rotate that so that we're actually rotating it in the opposite direction by cross-rotating it, which is good. But if you have a directional wheel, some cars have directional wheels like Hondas, I think of. That wheel's only made to turn one direction. We also have directional tires, so we can't cross those. So those
directional tires, and now we're having staggered tires where you have different sizes that you can't rotate.
Oh, I know. I was reading that, and they say there's side rotating where you take the right tire and put it on the left side and the left tire and put it on the right side.
We just had a guy come in yesterday with a brand new BMW, want us to rotate the tires. We tried to get him in for 2 days. We finally got him in, and we said we can't rotate them. They're different sizes.
Well, when we come back, we've got Doro and Gary and someone else here on a Hyundai Elantra, and we still got time for a text or two at 411-923. You're listening to Bumper Radio. Well, welcome back to Bumper Radio. I am Dave Riccio, missing my counterpart, Matt Allen, today because he is at automotive training. Hopefully he learns something and brings some knowledge back, because every now and then I'm not sure he does. He's not here, so I get to pick on him. He's probably listening via the KTR app. So welcome back. We've got Joel Bartko, who's in here with me, helping us help you with your car. And we've got a text here. The gentleman has a 2008... looks like a Toyota, and the screen always refreshes. 2008 Corolla, the airbag light is on. He was told by the dealership that it is a spiral cable. Does that sound right, or is there another issue? Joel, when the when the airbag light is on, what does that mean?
Well, the airbag light's on because the computer sees a fault in the airbag system, and it comes on. That system, again, tests itself the minute you turn the key on. That light's on. Obviously, the Toyota dealership went in there with their scanner and read a fault code for the spiral cable, also called the clock spring. There's a lot of different names for it. It is a common failure. It doesn't mean that's what's wrong, but if they're telling you that's what's wrong, I would kind of believe it because that's a common failure.
Issue.
It's a constantly moving part in the steering column, and it is a high failure item.
So basically what it is that that's a wire that's wrapped. It's coiled up. That's why they call it a coil spring.
Yeah.
Or
clock spring, spiral
spring, whatever.
Cable. Different manufacturers call it different names. I call it a clock spring, spiral cable, but basically a wire that's going to spin left 3.5 turns, right 3.5 turns, and not break. Also goes through there a lot of times as your cruise control or your horn buttons will go through there.
Radio controls.
Yeah, we used to see on the Dodge Caravans all the time the horn wouldn't work and the airbag light on. You knew right away it'd be a spiral cable or clock spring. It's a part that does fail. Probably the most common failure on an airbag system.
Well, I would definitely feel good about that. If you don't want to go to the dealer and you're looking for a shop, bumpertobumperradio.com. You're going to find shops like Joel Bartko's shop there at Arizona Imports, as well as a list of 20, 30 other hand-picked shops. These are shops that Matt and I feel comfortable about. We could send you there. We could send our family there. Anyone we want to send there. So anyway, thanks so much for the text. We're going to go with Doro in El Mirage on a 2002 Dodge Ram pickup. Go ahead, Doro. How can we help you?
Yeah, I got this Dodge Ram, and the ABS brake light comes on, but it only comes on when I get on the freeway or when I'm going a speed of about 50 to 65 miles an hour, and then my ABS and my brake light both come on.
I would be thinking that you've got a speed sensor kind of issue, but again, that's something that someone's going to need a scanner that reads the anti-lock brake system. And that what you've got is 4 wheel speed sensors, one on each wheel. or that truck might only have one in the rear pumpkin.
It has a center diff speed sensor on that thing.
That it was a common failure in those Dodge Rams, but I don't want to tell you just to go change it. You should have it checked. Any good shop can check that fairly simple.
And as consumers, one thing you need to understand, there's different modules on cars. So there's an ABS module. That's going to control the analog brake system. There's a TCM, and we abbreviate them because acronyms is what we do. TCM, transmission control module. That's going to control the transmission. There's an ECM, engine control module. There's all these different things. Sometimes when you go to XYZ Acme Auto Parts, when they plug into your car, they may not be looking at all the different modules.
Yeah, they're plugging in a universal code reader, a $50 tool where you go to shops like Matt or mine or anybody on the list. We've got vehicle-specific tools that cost $10,000, $15,000. And as you know, Matt's not here today because he's getting training to know how to use those tools. It's not just something that some guy can plug in.
Well, yeah, so I think it's weird that his showed up on the freeway, but maybe at faster speeds, that's when it's having trouble reading. Now, on a Dodge, I wouldn't be surprised if we're having a differential that's starting to shred some metal. So you can actually go to that speed sensor, pop it right on the top of the differential, and if there's metal on the end of it because they're magnetic, well, not only do we have a speed sensor issue because that one's been fouled up, we also have a differential issue. So I see that quite a bit.
I think a lot of times on those Dodges, the speedo would stop working too if that sensor went out.
And I'm not sure. I don't believe the speedometer pulls from that. It may pull from the speed sensor on the transmission, but they're all a little different, or a speed sensor on the transfer case.
And you were mentioning modules in cars. I mean, we see cars now with not uncommon to see 30 different modules, computer-controlled modules, and they all have to talk to each other now, where one little, they call it a CAN line, goes down, and they can't talk to each other, and it makes your car not run, not stop, not go, whatever.
We just had a car in. It was a Porsche Cayenne, which is very similar to a Volkswagen Touareg, I think it was. And this lady had been to 3 other shops. And the last shop she got it from was from a Porsche shop. And he said, well, we kind of think you need a transmission, but we're really not sure. We found a used one in California, but we're not sure it's the right one. But I think he was just trying to get away from it. And so it came over to our shop, and we looked at it, and there was there was a power problem between those modules. They were not talking like they should have been. At the end of the day, it was a relay was the problem. But there's a network that has all those things talking. So you can have one have an issue, and that knocks down the signal for all of them.
Something I hear all the time, Dave, is just plug your box in and tell us what's wrong.
Oh, gosh, man. I want that box.
I want it so bad. That's all I really want.
Actually, if I got it, I would be out of a job. I've got a text here. The gentleman has a Dodge pickup. It looks like it's a late 90s pickup, and he wants to do, it looks like the shop told him he needed an air filter and a belt, and he wants to do it himself, and how much should that cost? And during the break, Joel and I were talking about it, and there's a whole new thing called a stretch belt. I have never heard of this.
Yeah, a lot of these cars now, I thought it was only BMWs because they've had the stretch belt for a couple of years. The average person can't put it on. You need special tools to do it. On that Dodge Ram that he's talking about, that's a fairly simple one. We had a Mazda yesterday with a stretch belt on it. In my shop, we have 5 technicians. 5 guys had 4 or 5 different stretch belt tools. We had 4 guys standing there trying to put a belt on a car that you would think would take us 5 minutes at the most to put the one belt on, and it took us an hour with all the different tools. It's amazing how things have changed now.
Well, on this older Dodge, it sounds like he's going to do it himself. Well, obviously the air filter is not too big of a deal. Maybe that's a $10 or $20 piece.
Yeah, figure an air filter for $10 or $20 and a good serpentine belt for $50 or $60. You'd need a tool to pull back the tensioner. If you got your phone, take a picture of the belt routing first or draw it on a piece of paper. Sometimes there's a sticker under the hood that shows you how it goes, but I see people get the belt off and don't remember how to put it back on.
Oh, or you've seen them coming wrong after somebody the water pump's turned in the wrong direction. Well, the one thing I recommend people is that belt tensioner. It's a spring-loaded device, and that holds tension on the belt because this isn't a rubber band belt where it's self-tensioned. Those tensioners actually go bad. So I've seen cars that have that little squeak in the morning. You start the car up, a little chirp, 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 and the belt looks good. It's got plenty of depth to it, but it's squeaking. What do you think?
You have a bad tensioner or a bad idler. You know what we've run into now? A lot of these new cars have alternators with the coupler pulleys on them, where people get a belt squeal, they'll put a new tensioner, new pulley. I've had them come from other shops, 5 different belts, 4 different tensioners, and I tell them you need an alternator pulley, and they're like, what are you talking about? Because the cars were designed for fuel efficiency that alternator freewheels when you let off of it, And this is becoming a more popular thing. I'm seeing it in the Dodge Caravans. I'm seeing it in the Nissan Altimas. Mercedes is using it. They're all going to be using it because anything that saves fuel goes to all the manufacturers now.
Well, everything we talk about on the show is things that are different. We're talking about radiators that you voluntarily replace before they go bad. Well, the tanks are plastic. We haven't seen a metal tank come out on a radiator in a long time. Now you're telling me there's a clutch on an alternator? Man, the rules are always changing. The stuff your grandfather taught you about fixing cars, and my grandfather taught me how to fix cars as best he could. Everything is different, you know. It used to be, well, we got fuel injection now. We got modules for everything. Thanks for joining us. You can find us during the week at bumpertobumperradio.com. Also, check in our blog. You can find Matt's blog this week at ktr.com. Just click on the show's link. You'll find Bumper to Bumper Radio. Thanks, Joel, for coming in to help out. Remind us the details of your shop.
Arizona Import Bill's Beamers in Tempe, right off McClintock and Rio Salado Parkway by the mall. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Bree, for running the dials. And if you're looking for a great shop, bumpertobumperradio.com. You can trust their opinions.